Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing good, and today I am back with a video on class 8 science, synthetic fibers and plastics. When you look around yourself, you would see that most of the things that we see or that we use are made up of fibers and plastics. Let's talk about the clothes that we wear. The cotton clothes for summer and the winter wear, the woolen wear for winters, they are made up of fibers. The curtains in your room or the bed sheets or the fans, they are all made up of fibers or plastics. Whether you talk about a pen or a toothpaste or a bottle or even a fan, they are all made up of fibers or plastics. And in this lesson, we are going to learn about synthetic fibers and plastics in a lot more detail. So let's get started. So the first question, what are fibers? So fibers are thread or filament which forms constituent of various composite materials. So these are like threads or some filaments, and those filaments together form fibers, and fibers in turn form fabric. Now if you would have ever been to a shop for buying some kind of clothes, so what do they ask? That what kind of fabric do you want? Whether you want it in silk or you want it in rayon, you want it in nylon, you want it in polycot, you want it in terrycot, cotton. So what are these? These are all different types of fabrics, and these fabrics are made up of fibers. So fibers are nothing but thread-like structures, and many such thread-like structures are woven to form a fabric. Now, when I say these fibers form a lot of composite materials, what do we mean by composite materials? These materials could be textile like clothes, it could also be vegetable fibers. So these thread-like natural or synthetic strings. Now these filaments or these thread-like structures can be natural or it can be synthetic. Now when I say natural, that means the thread-like structure already exists in nature, and when we say synthetic, that means we artificially modify them, we artificially produce them. So that is like synthetic. So these thread-like structures could be natural or synthetic, but both of them are used to make a wide variety of products like paper, felt, sheets. So some of the examples of fibers are cotton, silk, wool. These are all examples of fibers. So basically, what do you understand? Fibers are thread-like structures, and many such thread-like structures together form a fabric. And fibers are hair-like or filament-like structures. Now they can exist as continuous filaments or they can exist as discrete elongated pieces. Right? So if you in fact have time, just have a look at wool. So when you look at one particular string of wool, what do you see? So that one particular string also is made up of tiny strings. So those fibers are together woven to form the fabric, and the fabric is wool. And this wool can be used to make a lot of woolen stuffs like sweaters, caps, gloves, and so many other things. So this is fiber. Now there are two types of fibers, natural fibers and synthetic fibers. So first let us see what are natural fibers. The name itself says natural, that means they exist in nature. So these fibers are obtained from plant or animal sources. Now anything that already exists in nature, that means it is obviously derived either from some or the other living organisms. So these kind of fibers are formed either from plants or from animal parts. So let us look at some examples of natural fibers. So some common examples are cotton, flax, jute, hemp, coir, tree wood, wool, silk. These are all examples of natural fibers. So now you know when you say cotton is a fiber, so many such cotton threads are together woven to form the fabric which is called cotton, and then that fabric is used to prepare, they can be used to produce shirts, frocks, pants, dresses. So that's how cotton can be used. So now, from where do we get cotton? So cotton is derived from a plant source. So basically it is an example of a seed fiber. It is collected from the seeds of cotton plant. So you see, this is a cotton plant. This is how cotton plant looks like. And so you see, these are the seeds of cotton plant, and from seeds only we get what we actually know as cotton. Similarly, if you talk about flax, jute or hemp, so all these are skin fibers. So these are all skin fibers. What do you mean by skin fibers? So these are collected from the skin surrounding the stem of their respective plant. So when you look at the stem, this is the stem. So outside the stem, the outermost layer or the skin of the stem. So from that skin, we get flax, jute and hemp. So that is why these are called skin fibers. Then you have coir. So coir is a coconut fiber which is obtained from coconut. So coir is obtained from coconut. So if you look at the structure of a coconut, you will see the outer brown layer which is like kind of rough. So that's how the coir fabric also looks like. So that's because it is derived from coconut. Then you have tree wood. So this is obtained from stalks of different plants like bamboo, then straw of wheat or rice. So these are the sources for tree wood. Now you see, different natural fibers, they have different sources, but all of them are derived either from a plant source or from an animal source. So if you talk about wool, so wool is obtained from a lot of animals. For example, if you see sheep, so they have that woolen protective covering over their body which helps them to survive in cold conditions. So from the skin of sheep we derive wool. Similarly, if you talk about silk, silk is obtained from an organism called silkworm. So you see, there are different sources for each of these natural fibers. So the next type of fiber is artificial fiber. Now as the name suggests, these are man-made fibers. That is, they are manufactured by men. They do not exist naturally. They do not exist in nature. So these are also known as synthetic fibers. So synthetic fibers, artificial fibers, man-made fibers all mean the same. Some of the examples of artificial fibers are nylon, rayon, polyester. So these are some common examples. Now you would have often heard about nylon threads, which are often used in your homes for drying clothes, or the nylon strong ropes which are used for rock climbing. It is also used for making parachutes. Rayon, polyester, these are used for making different types of clothes, bed sheets. So there are many applications of these artificial fibers. Now a lot of research was done by the scientists to improve on the naturally occurring fibers. Now, why artificial fibers came into existence? Because the natural fibers which existed like silk or wool or cotton, so they were pretty much expensive. So most of these artificial fibers, they are nothing but they are polymers. That is, they are made up of small units called monomers. Now we will talk about artificial fibers in more detail, but we see that the properties of artificial fibers can be changed in many different ways by changing the process by which they are produced, because these are completely under our control, under the control of human beings. So the kind of properties we want, we can alter the process of production in that way. So mostly these artificial fibers, they are comparatively cheap when compared to the natural fibers, but at the same time they give a similar look and feel as that of natural fibers. So the question is, how are these natural fibers, how are the artificial fibers produced? So that is an interesting and important question. So most of these fibers are produced by a process called spinning. Now what happens in spinning? So let's see. Now as I told just now that each of these artificial fibers, they are nothing but polymers. What do we mean by polymers? Poly means many, mers are nothing but unit. So any such big molecule which is made up of many small molecules, that is called a polymer. So let us see what happens in spinning. So this polymer is the artificial fiber basically. So initially when the polymer is formed, that time it is quite thick and viscous. And then this thick and viscous polymer is passed through a device, you can say, which is called spinneret. So what is a spinneret? Let's see. Spinneret. So this is nothing but a disc-like structure which has holes on it, and the polymers, which is viscous, that polymer comes out through those holes. So spinneret exists in a lot of different shapes. So here you see these are all spinnerets. They are disc-like structures and they have so many holes. So what happens is these polymers, they come out of these holes. And they are like they are not completely liquid, but they are very viscous, like very thick liquid. So that's how they come out of these spinnerets, the polymers. Now since the polymers are right now kind of viscous and liquidy, so they are then solidified, and when they solidify they form long thin threads, and those threads are nothing but the fibers. So basically this process is known as spinning. Why spinning? Because here you see they are like spinning through a device called spinneret and coming out as long threads. So because of this entire process, it is called spinning. So if you look at this structure, this shows a spinneret where you can see here the red colored portion which is shown here. This is the polymer outlet of this spinneret. Now depending on the type of the spinneret used, solid or hollow fibers are formed. Now some of the fibers might be hollow inside, some of them, because fibers are nothing but thin thread like structures. So the threads inside might be hollow, the threads inside might also be solid. So you see there are many different types of spinneret available. So here also you can see they are all of different types. So depending upon the type of the spinneret used, the type of the fibers are being formed. So this is briefly how the process of production of artificial fibers take place. Now as I said, these synthetic fibers are nothing but polymers. And what are polymers? These are large molecules which are made up of multiple repeated units. The word poly means multiple. So where you have multiple small units and they are all identical units, so they all just repeat themselves. So just think of this example of a chain which is formed by repetitive units. So if you observe this chain closely, you will see that it actually contains units like this which are joined together. Now when they join together in a specific pattern, they form a chain like this. So basically each of these units, so that this entire chain which is formed, this is the polymer. So the entire chain is the polymer, but each unit of this chain, so each particular this ring is a monomer. So a polymer consists of multiple monomers, so multiple repeated units. So the same unit, that is the same ring, gets repeated over and again to form a large molecule, that is polymer. So that's a polymer. Let's take some examples of polymers. So starch is an example of a polymer. So if you look at the structure of starch, this is how the chemical structure is. So you see this is one unit, this is another unit, and the same unit is repeating over and again, and that's how a big molecule of starch is formed. Let's take another example of nylon. So just now we were talking about nylon. What is nylon? It is a synthetic fiber or an artificial fiber. Right? So if you look at the chemical structure of nylon, what do you see? I mean, however, it looks quite complex, but if you try to observe it very closely, so if you observe it from here till here, you actually see that these are all repeated units. So these are all repeated units, right? So this is 1, this is 2, so first unit, second unit, third unit, and they are all identical units, and they are all joined by an amide bond. So NH bond is joining them. So you see here you have a bond between the monomer units. So many monomer units joined together by a bond forms a polymer. So here also in this case, nylon is an example of a polymer. So now you can relate this concept with the process of production, that is spinning. So these polymers are first formed. How they are formed? Polymers are formed from the monomers, that is from smaller units. So the first thing that will happen is many monomers will form polymers by a process called polymerization, where several monomer units will get joined together by some bond, and that's how it will form a polymer. And then this polymer will be in viscous form. So this will undergo the spinning process, that it will pass through the spinneret, and from the spinneret what we will obtain is the fibers, and then the fibers are solidified to form the final fibers. So that's how the production of artificial fibers take place. So based on whatever we have discussed, let's have a quick comparison between natural and artificial fibers. So natural fibers, they exist naturally, but artificial fibers, they do not exist naturally, they are man-made. But natural fibers, they are obtained from plant and animal sources because they exist naturally. So either from some plant part they are formed or from some animal part. For example, in case of cotton, it is obtained from the seeds of cotton plant. If you take example of say silk, it is obtained from silkworm. If you take example of wool, it is obtained from different animals like sheep. So the natural fibers are all obtained either from plant or animals, but artificial fibers, they are man-made. So for them also you need some raw material or some reactants. For example, it is obtained from coal, petroleum, water, air. So using all these things, the artificial fibers are formed. Natural fibers, not possible to change the fiber structure because we are not making them. So something which we are not creating, we will not be able to change its composition. But artificial fiber structure can be altered because it completely depends on us. So if we change the process of formation, so the structure of the artificial fiber will also change. Natural fibers are environment friendly, but artificial fibers are not. Why? Because in case of artificial fibers, the entire process of production which is involved, during that process, sometimes some poisonous gases are also released. So that means it causes harm to the environment during its process of production. Also, there are certain fibers which are harmful to environment. One such example is polypropylene. Natural fibers are more comfortable but higher priced, so they are quite expensive. Moreover, we do not have control on their production. So they are quite expensive, but artificial fibers have lower price, so they are cheap, but at the same time they are less comfortable. So if you, for a very common example, just take a top which is made up of cotton and take another top which is made up of artificial silk. So, and if you wear both of them, you can feel that the natural fiber is more comfortable to wear. So natural fibers mostly used in clothing, whereas artificial fibers are used for multiple purposes. For example, it is used in making ropes, it is used in making parachutes, it is also used in making, so when we talk about plastics, so plastics are used in making a lot of kitchenware, utensils, bottles, and so many other stuffs. So this is all about natural and artificial fibers. So let us take some examples or some types of artificial fibers. So we are going to discuss about rayon, nylon, polyester, and acrylic. So now we are going to discuss about each of these artificial fibers in more detail. So let us start with rayon. So rayon is also termed as artificial silk because it resembles silk, but it is not the natural silk. It is obtained, like if you talk about the natural silk, that is obtained from silkworm. So the process of extraction of silk from silkworm, that process itself is very costly, which makes natural silk very, very costly. But again, if you look at the quality of silk, it has got a very beautiful texture, a very attractive appearance. Because of that, a lot of demand is there for silk, for different types of garments, clothing, etc. So that is why somewhere in the 19th century, this artificial silk was developed for the first time, and rayon is the first man-made fiber. So it was the first fiber which was artificially manufactured by men. And if you look at its appearance, it looks exactly like silk. So this is how the rayon threads look like, and these threads are woven together to form the rayon fabric. So now let us see how rayon is produced. So rayon is primarily obtained from wood pulp. Now wood pulp, what is wood pulp? It is nothing but a plant source. So basically it is obtained from plant sources. Now plant sources, they are again naturally existing things. So this exists in nature, right? So since rayon is prepared from something which naturally exists in nature, sometimes it is also known as semi-synthetic fiber. It is also called semi-synthetic fiber. Why? Because the raw material which is needed for producing rayon is wood pulp, and wood pulp is a natural thing which exists in nature on its own. So since it is obtained from a naturally occurring polymer, that is why it is called semi-synthetic. So now let us look at the process. So if you talk about wood pulp, what does it contain? So if this is the wood pulp, and wood pulp contains a polymer, that is, which polymer? It contains cellulose, and cellulose is a polymer. So this cellulose is then chemically converted into a soluble compound. So you see, this is how the structure of cellulose look like. So you see, it has got repeated units of monomer. So this cellulose is converted into a soluble compound by chemical reactions, and then this soluble compound is made to pass through the spinneret. So you remember the spinneret, concept of spinneret, it is nothing but a disc-like structure through which the viscous polymers are actually forced to come out of it. So they come in the form of thin fibers or filaments. So now these filaments which come out of it, they are then allowed to solidify. So they are solidified, and when they solidify completely, they form the rayon fibers. So that's how the synthetic fibers are formed. So basically this is how the process is. So for any of the synthetic fibers, more or less the process revolves around this kind of a scenario. Now specific types of rayon are manufactured in many different ways, like depending upon how the process is exactly happening, which are the chemical substances you are using during these chemical reactions. Depending on that, you get different types of rayon. Some of the types of rayon are viscose, modal, lyocell. These are all different examples of rayon, because in rayon also you have many subtypes. So let us now look at the advantages of rayon. What are their properties? Where are they used? Now some of the most important property is that they resemble silk in appearance, but at the same time they are a lot cheaper than that of silk. So they are cheaper than silk. They can be dyed in various colors. So you actually get rayon in many different colors like red, blue, black, yellow, and so on. So due to its availability in various colors and due to its silk-like appearance, it is actually in demand for making different types of garments and clothes. It also makes very good bed sheets and carpets. So, and for that it is often mixed with some other type of fibers also. For example, sometimes rayon is mixed up with cotton, or it is mixed up with some other type of fiber, and that's how a new type of fabric is formed. So you would have seen that many bed sheets, they have a very shiny appearance, they have a silky look. So that is due to the presence of rayon. So the next synthetic fiber that we will talk about is nylon. So nylon is first man-made fully synthetic fiber, because in case of rayon we saw that it was semi-synthetic because it was obtained from a naturally occurring polymer called cellulose from wood pulp of plants. But in case of nylon, it is fully synthetic. That means it is obtained from substances which are like they are not natural polymers. So everything happens artificially. That is why it is a fully synthetic fiber. So if you look at the structure of nylon, they are polymers made up of many monomer units. So here you can see the structure of nylon. So these are the monomer units in case of nylon. These monomer units are either acids or amines or mixture of diamines and diacids. So that is how the structure or the chemical composition of nylon is. So if you look at its structure, you can actually see that there are repetitive units. So as you can see here, so these are the repetitive units. So you see the same units are getting repeated over and again, and they are all connected. Or how are these units joined together? They are joined together by this bond. So this bond is joining together the units. And what are these bonds called? These bonds are known as the amide bond. Now, I will not get into the details of all these things. As you go to your higher classes, you will know about different types of bonding. You will learn about acids, you learn about amines. So I will not get into all those details. What I am trying to say is you always have repeated units which are joined together by bonds to form a polymer. So this is how the structure of nylon would look like. So now let's see how nylon is prepared. So nylon is prepared from coal, water and air. So you see here in this case, you really do not have a specific polymer from which nylon can be directly prepared. So it is just from these raw materials, coal, water and air. So with the help of these raw materials, some acids are prepared, some amines are prepared, and then they react to form what we call as nylon. So nylon do not exist in nature. Nylon is actually prepared in chemical plants from organic materials obtained from coal. What are organic materials? Carbon containing materials. Coal contains carbon, right? So in the process of preparation of nylon, what happens is two fairly large molecules are reacted together at moderate temperature and pressure. So what are those large molecules? One is adipic acid and the other one is hexamethylene diamine. Now I told, right, nylon is composed of diamines, diacids, acids or amines. So basically it is composed of acids and amines. Now here I am talking specifically about the preparation of nylon 6,6. So for preparation of this particular type of nylon, we use adipic acid and we use hexamethylene diamine. Now you might ask, then why do we need coal? So if we directly want to use these acids and amines, but from where do we get these acids and amines? So we actually get these from coal. So this hexamethylene diamine is actually derived from coal. Now we are not getting into those complex chemical reactions here, but you should just know that this is what we actually get from coal and this is how the chemical structure looks like. Now when these two are allowed to react with each other at moderate temperature and pressure, what happens is both of them react with each other, and in the process they release water molecule, and what we get is a polymer, and what we get is a polymer that is nylon 6,6, and in this process water is released. So this process where polymer formation takes place is known as polymerization. So this is how nylon is prepared. So this is just example of one specific type of nylon which gets prepared. But from this you can see that it is a pure synthetic fiber, because it is no way related to the naturally existing fibers. So the polymer here is actually prepared by a man process or an artificial process. So let us look at the advantages of nylon. The most important advantage is that it is very strong. When I say strong, it is extremely strong. So you can actually compare a nylon rope with that of an iron or a steel rod. So it is that strong. Its strength is so much, and it has got some elasticity in it. So because of this, it is used to make ropes, and these ropes are strong enough that people can use them for rock climbing. So you can imagine how strong the ropes are. So they just, with the help of those ropes, they climb huge mountains. So the ropes are able to take the weight of persons. Not only one person, sometimes multiple people also use the same rope for climbing. So the rope, they really have good strength. It is also, at the same time, it is not very heavy. It is strong, but it is not heavy. Now since it is light in weight, so it is more convenient to carry it from one place to another. It is easy to wash. So nylon is also used for making socks and some clothes also. So that way also it is easy to maintain. clothes, ropes, tents, belts, bags, parachutes. That is the most wonderful example that this tells you the strength of nylon. It is also used to make parachutes. So you see these ropes and parachutes, they are made up of nylon. So the skipping which you use, there also you often see nylon being used. The nylon rod is also used for drying clothes. So there are a couple of advantages associated with nylon, and the most beautiful character or property of nylon is that it is very strong, elastic, at the same time light in weight. Now the third artificial fiber is polyester. So polyester, the name says poly. Poly means what? Multiple, many. Ester. So it is again a polymer which contains many ester linkages. Now what is ester linkage? You will study all this in higher classes, but okay, I'll give you a brief introduction to it. So it is again a synthetic fiber, purely synthetic, and it is a polymer containing multiple units, that is monomers, which are linked by ester linkages. Now what do we mean by ester linkage? So let us look at the chemical structure of polyester. So you see, this is how polymer, this N shows that this is the monomer and it gets repeated N number of times. So it gets repeated multiple number of times. So this is, and this particular structure which you see, it is for polyethylene terephthalate. So that is, this structure is for polyethylene terephthalate. Now again, depending upon the composition, there are many types of polyester. Not one single polyester exists. Now let's see what is an ester linkage. So ester is nothing but a basic organic chemical compound, so carbon containing chemical compound. And how do you see, how do you know the presence of ester? This is how the ester would look like. So basically this shows that this carbon is attached to one alkyl group on this side and it is connected to another alkyl group on the other side. So this is how the ester linkage looks like. So if you look at this structure, you can actually see the presence of CO. So with that, you can see that the ester linkages exist here. So this is how the structure of a polyester looks like. Now, depending on the chemical structure, a polyester can be a thermoplastic, it can be a thermoset. So polyester is often mixed with other fibers. For example, polyester is often mixed with cotton and it forms polycotton, or often called polycot. So polyester again, it is often mixed with these kind of different materials to form a good fabric for bed sheets, dresses, etc. So let us see how polyester is prepared. So polyester is again obtained from coal, air, water and petroleum. So it is obtained from the petrochemicals. It was developed for the first time in the 20th century. So polyester fibers are formed from a chemical reaction between an acid and an alcohol. Like in case of nylons, we needed acids and amines. But in this case, what we need is acids and alcohols. So with acids and alcohols, we can get polyesters. These polyester fibers can be very long molecules which are very stable. So very long, length is too much, but at the same time they are quite stable. So let us look at how exactly do we prepare this polyester. This is the structure of polyester. So we are taking example of this particular polyester, that is polyethylene terephthalate, and we will see how it is prepared. So now let's exactly see how we prepare this particular polyester, that is polyethylene terephthalate. So for this also we need one acid and one alcohol. So you can see the acid and the alcohol here. So the alcohol which we use here is ethylene glycol. So ethylene glycol is the alcohol that is used here, and which is the acid that we use? The acid is nothing but terephthalic acid or dimethyl terephthalate. So in the first step, this ethylene glycol combines with dimethyl. So here you can see there are two methyl groups. Due to the presence of two methyl groups, it is dimethyl terephthalate. So both of these combines in presence of a catalyst which increases the rate of their reaction, and they form a chemical, and whatever they form is the monomer alcohol. So basically they form a monomer alcohol. What do we mean by monomer alcohol? That means this particular alcohol acts as the monomer unit which undergoes polymerization to form the polymer. Correct? Now this monomer alcohol will in turn will combine with terephthalic acid, and one alcohol and one acid will combine to form the polyester. Which is the polyester that is formed? Polyethylene terephthalate. So that is the structure of this one. So this is how the structure would be. Polyethylene terephthalate. Now please do not bother yourself with the chemicals, with these complex chemical structures, because it is not, it should not be taught right now, because you do not know the basic you do not have the basic knowledge of the chemical structure and nomenclature. So we will learn these in higher classes, but why I am telling this is just to give you an idea about how we actually prepare these things. So whenever you have to prepare a polyester, you need an acid and an alcohol. Now depending upon the acid and the alcohol which you have chosen, that particular type of polyester will be formed, and this process of preparation of polyester is known as polymerization. Where polymer is formed, that process is always called polymerization. So let us now look at the advantages of polyester and why do we use it. So one important advantage is that cushioning material in pillows. Now why is it used there? There are a couple of things. First of all, you saw how polyester looks like, right? So some of it is also used to make foam like structure, which is often used to fill the material inside pillows. It is also used to make bottles, the PET bottles, which are often used for storing waters and any other liquids at home. It is also used to make dress materials. Now one very important advantage with polyester is that they do not wrinkle easily, therefore it is easier to maintain them. Like even if that particular cloth is being worn once, but it doesn't wrinkle, so maintenance is easy. It is also easy to wash. That is why it is in great demand for dress materials. It is also used to give finishing on wood products like guitar, piano, etc. So the outer layer finishing is often given by polyester. And polyester also combines with a lot of other fibers to form many different types of fabrics. For example, some of the examples of polyesters are, one good example of polyester is terylene. And this terylene can combine with cotton and it forms terracotta or terracotta. Again, polyester can combine with wool to form polywool. So all these types of fabrics are also used for making dress materials. Films for pouches, adhesive tapes, capacitors, plastic cards, etc. So here also you see a lot of use of polyesters. Now let us talk about the fourth type of synthetic fiber, that is acrylic. So acrylic is again a synthetic fiber and it resembles wool. So like how you have the artificial silk or rayon which resembles silk, in a similar way acrylic resembles wool. So now the pure wool, the natural wool, is again very expensive. So this acrylic gives the appearance of wool, but at the same time it is less expensive. So let us see how do we prepare acrylic. So it is also a polymer. So it is prepared from polyacrylonitrile by polymerization reaction. So basically when you talk about acrylic production, so again acrylic is nothing but it is also a polymer, and polymer is produced by the process of polymerization. So which is the monomer involved here? The monomer involved here is polyacrylonitrile. This is how polyacrylonitrile looks like. So you see it is a polymer, and this polymer has 1900 monomer units which are joined together by bonds. So this polyacrylonitrile is dissolved in a solvent and then the filaments are forced out to come through this multi-hole spinneret. So as you can see, this is the spinneret. So the filaments which come out of it, they are in viscous form, and then they are solidified finally to form acrylic. So from these filaments we get acrylic. So this is the polymer from which we actually form acrylic, that is polyacrylonitrile. And what are the solvents that are used in this process? Some of the solvents are like sodium thiocyanate or dimethyl formamide. These are some of the solvents which are used for preparation of acrylic. So advantages of acrylic are that it is light, soft and warm. Since it is warm, therefore it can act as a substitute of wool to prepare woolen clothes for winters. Cheap and durable clothes. Now, even though it is less expensive when compared to natural wool, but at the same time it is quite durable. Sweaters, tracksuits, fabrics, carpets, these are all prepared from acrylic. Now, acrylic also gives appearance of glass. Now, there are many different types of acrylic that can be produced. Now, some of these acrylics are also used to prepare lenses. Now, since they give appearance of glass, it is also chosen due to its high impact and low weight. So mirrored finish can be given to acrylic sheet, and that's how it is also used for making a lot of stuffs where in a lot of areas where you need glass. So instead of using glass, what you use is acrylic. So with this, we have discussed about all the different types of synthetic fibers. Now, based on whatever we have discussed, let us look at some of the common characteristics of all synthetic fibers. Now, there are certain advantages as well as disadvantages associated with synthetic fibers. So let us first talk about the advantages. So it is less expensive, definitely, because when you think of the natural fibers like the natural silk, natural wool, they are all very expensive. But compared to that, these synthetic fibers are cheap, they are strong and elastic, and they last for a longer time when compared to the natural fibers. You take a very simple example. If you have a cloth which is made up of, you have a dress which is made up of pure cotton, and you have another dress which is made up of say poly cotton or terry cotton, something like that. So if you look at the durability of the dresses, you will see that the dress which is made up of pure cotton will not last longer, because cotton has a lot of pores. So due to the presence of those pores, when you repeatedly wash that particular garment, so the material tends to become worse. But at the same time, wearing the pure cotton cloth is far more comfortable when compared to the synthetic fiber. Easy to maintain. Now, these synthetic fibers, whether it is rayon or it is polycot or it is terry cotton, so all these type of synthetic fibers, they do not get wrinkled very easily, and they are also easy to wash. They get dried up easily. So because of these advantages, they are quite easy to maintain. Durable, as I said, easily available. Now, in order to prepare these fibers, their production is under our control. So we can produce as much as we want. So therefore, they are also easily available. But when you talk about the natural fibers, they are not under our control. So their availability is also not under our control. Now, however, we have so many advantages, but at the same time, there are certain disadvantages or negative points associated with the synthetic fibers. So one is they shrink and melt when burned. So if they come in contact with fire, then these fibers tend to melt completely. Therefore, there is a huge risk involved in this case. Now, if somebody is wearing a cloth which is made up of a synthetic fabric, now, and if by mistake that person comes in contact with fire, maybe in front of a candle or in front of a firecracker or in front of the gas oven, so then what happens is that fabric easily catches fire and the fiber starts melting, because of which the fire sticks to the body of that person and it can burn that person. So it is extremely risky to wear synthetic clothes while cooking or while burning firecrackers or while handling anything with fire. So it is always advisable to wear cotton clothes or to wear natural fibers when you are near fire. So this is one very important thing to be remembered, that synthetic clothes should never be worn when you are going to do something or when you are going to deal with fire. Do not absorb sweat. Now synthetic clothes, they do not have lot of open pores, and as a result they do not absorb the sweat. Now since they do not absorb sweat, what happens is during hot days, during summer days, you tend to get a lot of sweat because the temperature outside is quite high. Now if you are wearing a cotton cloth, they tend to absorb all the sweat, and there are a lot of pores on the cotton cloth that helps to cool your body, so you feel comfortable. But if you are wearing a synthetic cloth, it will, first of all, it will not allow the sweat to go out because it will not absorb the sweat. So what happens is all the heat gets trapped within your body, so you tend to feel more hot. Therefore during summers it is always advisable to wear cotton clothes. Less comfortable to wear. Now since these synthetic fibers, as I said, they do not absorb lot of sweat and all, so they are not very comfortable to wear also. Their production process might harm environment, because during their process of production a lot of gases are produced which are not good for the environment, so they harm the environment. So that means also their production process is not very environment friendly. So now we have discussed about synthetic fibers, let us quickly talk about plastics. So where do we see plastics? Now, plastics are associated with us on everyday basis. So you look around yourself and you'll be able to see a lot of things which are made up of plastics. Whether you talk about your bottles, you talk about the storage jars in your kitchen, or you talk about a bucket, you talk about a table, talk about a chair, you think of a comb, the plastic bags, the polythene wrappers, dustbins, pens. There are so many things actually which are made up of plastics. So plastics play a very important role in our day-to-day life. So we are going to talk about some of the characteristics of plastics and their pros and cons. Now some of the important properties of plastics are, and these properties make plastics so popular to be used in all the everyday items. So you look at anything and you'll see most of the things are made up of plastics, because plastics are very easily moldable to different shapes. Now they are quite flexible. So if you look at your multimeter in your lab, so the outer part or the outer covering is made up of nothing but plastics. You look at the wires, so the outer layering or the outer covering of the wires, they are also made up of some type of plastics. You look at your wiring, the sockets and all. So what is this made up of? They are also made up of some type of plastics. So plastics can actually take shape of any desired shape. It is reusable. So if you see a plastic which has been used in one object, the same plastic can again be melted and it can be given a different shape to be used for something else, because the plastic do not get rusted or the plastics do not get corroded like metals. So therefore plastics are durable and they can be reused in some different form. They are lightweight, not very heavy. Poor conductors of electricity, they do not allow electricity to pass through them. That is why you see all the coverings of the electric wires, they are all made up of plastics, so that even when we can touch them safely and there are no risks of getting electric shock. Similarly, if you see for the electrical outlets, the open outlets are made safe for children by putting the electrical safety caps, and these electrical safety caps, they are also made up of plastics, because plastics being poor conductor, they will not allow electricity to pass through them and there will be very less risk of getting electric shock. Some are heat resistant. Now some plastics even do not allow heat to affect them. They do not get deformed in presence of heat. Now this is not true for all plastics. It is true only for some plastics. So some examples of plastics for which this is true is bakelite. So bakelite is one such plastic which is heat resistant. Bakelite, melamine. So the melamine is also heat resistant. You would have seen the dinner sets and the crockery sets made up of melamine. So even if you heat a melamine vessel, they do not get melted or they do not get deformed. In fact, that is why for a lot of utensils which are used for cooking purpose, for example, the fry pans and all, there also you will see their handles are made up of plastics, because so that we can, even when the fry pan is put on the oven and the oven is burning, the handle should not be hot, so that we can hold the handle comfortably. So that is why the handle is often made up of the heat resistant type of plastics like bakelite or melamine. So these properties of plastics make it make it very popular even inside the kitchen for making various utensils, plates, spoons, forks, then the crockery items, fry pans, handles. So everywhere we see plastics. Another very important property is that they do not react with water or air. So plastics are very non-reactive. Now they do not have a tendency of reacting with other chemical substances to form some new product. So that tendency is not there, and that is why plastic containers are considered to be very safe for storing food products, because when you want to store food product, you do not want the chemical composition of the food to get changed. Correct? So we want the vessel to be made up of such a kind of a material which do not react easily with other chemicals. So that is true for plastic, and that is why it is often used for storage. Durable, they last for a longer time, and one reason here is that no rusting happens in case of plastics, no corrosion happens in case of plastics. So that is also a very big advantage, because if you think of anything where rusting happens, for example iron or copper vessel, and if you leave them outside for a long time, so they are continuously being exposed to air. Now whenever there is little bit of moisture in the air, they tend to get rust over their surface. But any risk like that is not there for plastics. They can form wires and sheets, so they are so flexible that they can not only take different shapes, they can even form thin wires or thin sheets. So because of so many properties and so much of flexibility, plastics are very popular for making items in our day-to-day life. They can have variety of colors, so even they are available in a lot of colors. So let us now see the different types of plastics. So in plastics also we have many types of plastics with different properties. So broadly there are two types of plastics. One is thermoplastics. So what are thermoplastics? The word thermo means heat. So these type of plastics, they get deformed on heating. So when you heat them, they either change their shape, they start melting. So some change or some deformation happens in them. So they also tend to bend easily. So that's what change in shape in any form. So some examples of thermoplastics, most common examples of thermoplastics are polythene, which we often use as in polythene bags, and another example is PVC, that is polyvinyl chloride. And where do we use them? So these polyvinyl chlorides, they are often used in these kind of plastic tubes like structures. So they are used for making pipes or pipe fittings. So they come in rigid form as well as flexible. So they are rigid, because of which they are used in making pipes and all. But at the same time, they are quite flexible. Right? So when you talk about this polythene bags, now this is something which is very commonly used by all of us. So what does polythene consist of? So polythene is nothing but poly plus ethene. That means multiple units of ethene. So ethene is the monomer here, and many ethene together form polythene. So you see so many different objects made of thermoplastics like comb, pens, especially the toys of children, they are all made up of thermoplastic. So if you actually try to heat them, they will show some sort of deformation. However, there is another set of plastics called thermosetting plastics. So these plastics, they do not get deformed with heat, and that is why more important things, for example, the electrical appliances covering or the utensils, so whichever is exposed to more heat or electricity, they are all made up of thermosetting plastics. So they once molded, they do not deform on heating. So once the molding is done, when that plastic is being formed, So once it is formed, once it has taken a particular shape, after that it doesn't bend or it doesn't change its shape on being heated. So it is heat as well as fire resistant. So therefore, if you use these kind of plastics for making cooking utensils, so you can easily cook in them, because if you heat those utensils, nothing will happen to the utensil. But if you use an utensil made up of thermoplastic, what will happen? As soon as you put it on the stove, as soon as you heat it, the plastic utensil itself will start deforming, it will itself start melting. So that would become a problem. So some examples of thermosetting plastics are bakelite, melamine. So these are examples of thermosetting plastics. So if you look at melamine, it is an organic base which contains a lot of nitrogen. So nitrogen content is very high in melamine. These days you would have seen the melamine dinner sets where you have melamine plates, spoons, cups, saucers, everything. So you can actually heat those vessels directly because they are heat resistant. Again, bakelite, they are heat resistant. At the same time, they are poor conductor of electricity. So that is why they are often used in the electrical appliances. So that, because whenever you are dealing with electrical appliances, there are chances of electric shock. So you want something which is poor conductor of electricity. So bakelite is being used in radio casings or telephone casings, and this bakelite was developed for the first time by a Belgian chemist called Baekeland, and that is why the name bakelite was given to it. So bakelite is also used for making kitchenware, because in kitchenware also, if it is poor conductor of electricity, that is also good. So if you look at these types of plastics, they are very durable plastic, and they, in fact, when you talk about melamine, as I said, it has very high content of nitrogen. So you might say that, okay, so if melamine contains so much of nitrogen, and we know that nitrogen is a macronutrient for plants need nitrogen for their growth. So why can't we extract nitrogen from melamine and use it as fertilizer? Well, that is not very economical, because the process by which nitrogen is released from melamine, that is an extremely slow process. So it is not really economical to use melamine as a source of nitrogen to be used as fertilizer. Now, when we talk about plastics, we are talking about all the good things related to plastics. It is light, it is less expensive, it is heat resistant, poor conductors of electricity. So as if plastics have got all the good things with it, and that is why we make so many things made up of plastics. But actually, when you really look at it, you see that plastics harm the environment. Plastic is not good for our environment. Why? That's because plastics are non-biodegradable. Now you might ask, what is the meaning of non-biodegradable? Now when you use any object, whether it is made up of anything, once you have used it, what do? You just throw it in the dustbin. Let's say you have purchased a packet of chips. You ate the chips. So now what do you do with the wrapper or the packet, which is made up of plastic? You just throw it in your dustbin. What happens to your dustbin? It then goes outside of your house to maybe the neighborhood dustbin. From there, where does it go? It again goes to some garbage area of your town or city. But ultimately, what happens to that plastic? So what we want is that plastic should get broken down, and it should get into the environment. I mean, it should not remain as a waste in the environment, right? So here we will talk about biodegradable and non-biodegradable. So any type of solid wastes which we throw, they can be categorized into two types. One is biodegradable, the other is non-biodegradable. Now what do we mean by biodegradable and what do we mean by non-biodegradable? So bio means life, degradable, degrade means what? To break down. So all those waste materials which can be degraded or broken down to simpler harmless forms, they are called biodegradable wastes. That means in the environment itself, those objects or those waste products will be broken down into further simpler forms, and that's how they get mixed up with the environment and used up in the environment. So they do not cause any harm to the environment. For example, all our kitchen waste, paper waste or vegetable waste, all these waste, what happens to them? So they also go to the dustbin, and from there it goes to some garbage area. Now you would have seen that every city has got some landfills or garbage area where all the wastes of that locality are being thrown. Now what happens to these kind of biodegradable waste? They are acted upon by a lot of microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, and they actually decompose them and break them down into simpler forms, which in turn are used as fertilizer by the plant. So they get degraded, they get broken down, and they get mixed with the soil. So all the important nutrients go into the soil, and then they act as fertilizer for the plants. So that is how biodegradable wastes are recycled in the environment. So they do not cause any harm to the environment. Instead, they actually help in increasing the fertility of the soil. So examples of such wastes which are decomposed by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. So which organisms help in decomposition? They are bacteria and fungi, and that is why they are often called decomposers. So examples of such wastes are paper waste, cow dung, excreta, agricultural wastes, that would include all your vegetable waste, wood, etc. So all these are biodegradable waste. So even if we are using all of these and we are throwing them a lot often, that also is not a problem because it is not causing any harm to our environment. But on the other hand, we have the other type of wastes called non-biodegradable. That means they cannot be broken down into any simpler, harmless form. That means the more we use plastics, the more of it is actually getting accumulated in our environment. Right? So what do we do with that accumulation? Because nothing can happen to that plastic. So it is simply being added up. And at the same time, it can even cause harm. For example, plastics cannot be digested by any living organism. But when you have pile of plastic bottles or plastic wrappers, it might happen that a lot of insects or small birds, they eat it up and then they get choked and they die. So plastics is something which is not biodegradable, which is not digestible. So what do we do with so much of plastics accumulating in our environment? So it is actually adding to the pollution. So here in case of plastics, the process of decomposition is either not possible, no decomposition at all, or even if in some type of plastics it is possible, it is very slow. So that means the more plastics we are using, the more wastes we are actually adding to our environment. So plastics are one very common example of non-biodegradable waste. Other wastes are in pesticides, insecticides, DDT, industrial wastes, metallic wastes. These are also non-biodegradable waste. But plastic is something which is hugely used by all of us. So a lot of plastics is being used, and that is why a lot of non-biodegradable wastes come due to plastics. So therefore, we should always remember and judiciously use plastics so that we do not unnecessarily use them and adversely affect our environment. So we should always remember, reduce, recycle and reuse. So to save our environment, these 3 R's are extremely important. When I say reduce, that means reduce unnecessary usage of plastics. So wherever you think that plastic can be substituted by something else, then please do that. For example, instead of using plastic cups for having tea, you can use paper cups, or you can even use the small cups which are made up of mud. Now instead of use the polythene bags, you can use the paper bags. So wherever possible, try to replace plastic with something which is biodegradable. Recycle and use plastics in different forms. So one plastic which has been used in one form, try to use it in some other form. For example, let's say that you have plastics, a lot of polythene bags. Now you have already used them and you just want to throw it. Now instead of throwing it, what you can do is the same polythene bag can be used in some different way to create a bigger plastic which might be of use to somebody else. Or you can just stitch together all the small polythene bags to make a big plastic, and that can be used as a cover to your vehicle outside. So you should actually try recycling or reusing the plastic in some other form so that you are not using more plastics and you are not adding to more plastics as garbage. So waste segregation is a must to recycle. Now if you want to recycle, it is very important that when you throw your wastes, All the biodegradable waste should be thrown separately and the non-biodegradable waste should be thrown separately, so that all the non-biodegradable waste can be taken together and they can be recycled. So the same plastic bottles which you have thrown out of your house, maybe the same bottles can be used, they can be cleaned and they can be actually recycled to form new bottles, so that we actually do not create or do not manufacture more plastics. The third one is reuse. Use the same plastics again and again. So let's say you went to the vegetable shop, you bought some vegetables, so they gave it to you in plastic, in a plastic bag. So you brought it home. Now try to use the same plastic bag couple of times, as long as you can, so that you are not using you are not unnecessarily utilizing some other plastics. In the first place, try to avoid using plastics as much as possible, because the more we use plastic, even though plastics make our life very convenient, but the more we use plastics, the more we are damaging our environment. So with this, we have reached towards the end of this lesson. So let us quickly look at some of the questions. Question number 1. Explain why some fibers are called synthetic. Now, why are they called synthetic? Because they do not occur naturally in the environment and we manufacture them. Now, since they are artificially prepared from things like coal, petroleum, air or water, so that is why they are called synthetic. So they do not exist naturally. So examples of synthetic fibers are nylon, polyester, rayon. Question number 2. Mark the correct answer. Rayon is different from synthetic fibers because it has a silk-like appearance. Well, rayon does have a silk-like appearance, but that doesn't make it different from other fibers. It is obtained from wood pulp. Yes, it is obtained from wood pulp. Its fibers can also be woven like those of natural fibers. Even for artificial fibers also, their fibers can be woven to form a fabric. But in case of rayon, it is obtained from wood pulp, and wood pulp contains cellulose, which is a naturally occurring polymer. So that is how rayon is different from others, and that is why rayon is often called the semi-synthetic fiber. Question number 4. Give examples which indicate that nylon fibers are very strong. Now, as I said, the most beautiful thing about nylon is that they are extremely strong. At the same time, they are very flexible. That is why they are used in parachutes. So you see the ropes of the parachutes. Do you think that they do not need to be strong? They need to be really, really strong. Even for rock climbing, you need strong ropes. And there also you see nylon. For drying clothes also you use nylon ropes. So actually nylon fibers have this characteristics that they are very strong. Question number 5. Explain why plastic containers are favored for storing food. Now, one thing is they are non-reactive. They generally do not react with a lot of things like oxygen or water. They are not very reactive to all of this, and therefore there is no rusting, there is no corrosion of these containers, and they are durable. They stay with you for a long time. So instead of plastic, if you start using metal containers, they will get very easily rusted. So that would not be nice. Again, you will not be able to use them for a long time. These plastic containers are also quite cheap. They are not that expensive as other metals. They do not corrode. They are also light in weight. So it is very convenient to use them as storage containers. So all these actually together make them very favored for storing food. Question number 6. Explain why the following are made of thermosetting plastics. Now, what are thermosetting plastics? Those which do not get deformed when heated. So saucepan handles. Now, what do we do with the saucepans? We cook food. So we put them on fire, we put them on heat. So if the handles also get heated up, we will not be able to touch the handle comfortably. So that is why the handles are made up of thermosetting plastics, because thermosetting plastics are poor conductors of heat. So we do not feel hot when we touch them. At the same time, they do not bend on heating. So even if you heat them, they really do not deform. So it is very convenient to hold them while cooking. Electric plugs, switches, plug boards, why are they used in association with the electric equipments? That's because these plastics are again poor conductors of electricity. So they do not allow electric current to pass through them, and therefore you are completely safe of electric shocks. There are no chances of getting electric shock. Question number 7. Categorize the material into can be recycled and cannot be recycled. So here you see a list of things. You have to say which one will be recycled and which one cannot be recycled. Okay, so what we do is whatever can be recycled, we will mark it as yes, and whatever cannot be recycled, we will mark it as no. So the first one is telephone instruments. It can be recycled. Yes, it can be recycled. Yes, telephone instruments cannot be recycled, so it is a no. Plastic toys, do you think it can be recycled? Yes, of course. You can use the same plastic for making a lot of other things, or you can use the toy in some different form. Cooker handles, so can it be recycled? The handles of your cooker, it cannot be recycled. The carry bags, which we carry, yes, it can be recycled. Ballpoint pens, can it be recycled? Yes. Plastic bowls, yes, it can be recycled. Plastic covering on electrical wires. So you see all the plastic things that can be recycled, the plastic chairs, but when you talk about the electrical switches, again it cannot be recycled. So all the plastic things can actually be recycled. Question number 8. Rana wants to buy shirts for summer. Should he buy cotton shirts or shirts made from synthetic material? Now for summers, it will be more heat, so you are going to sweat more. So if you use a cotton shirt, cotton will absorb sweat, and also if you look at the cotton fabric, it has got a lot of pores, so it actually allows to keep your body cool. So cotton would be more comfortable during summers. So cotton absorbs sweat, it keeps the body cool, therefore it is more comfort, and it is also very comfortable to wear because it is very soft and light. So cotton shirt will be more preferred during summers. Question number 9. Give examples to show that plastics are non-corrosive in nature. Now, since plastics are non-corrosive, that is, they do not react with oxygen or air to form new products, or there is no rusting or anything like that is not there on plastic. That is why it is actually used in making so many kitchen wares, so many utensils. Not only that, it is also used for the outer covering of the electric wires, the electrical outlets. Now it is used in these places because it is non-corrosive. Otherwise, every time it is exposed to air, it will undergo some sort of rusting, it will start reacting with air, and it will form some new substance. So, but all those things doesn't happen, and that is why it is actually used in so many things. Question number 10. Should the handle and bristles of a toothbrush be made of the same material? Now, when you look at the bristles of your toothbrush, what do you think the bristles should be like? So these bristles should be soft, they should be elastic because you actually move them inside your mouth so that it can reach even the cornermost tooth. They should also be light, it should not be very heavy, right? But when you talk about the handle, do you want the same characteristics for the handle also? Not really. What do we want for the handle? We want the handle to be quite strong. We also want the handle to be such that it is easy to hold, because this part need not to be flexible. We are not going to move this part. This part is just for holding. So it has to be tough. So therefore the handle is often made up of hard plastic so that it can give it some sort of toughness, some sort of strength. Whereas the bristles are often made up of the nylon fibers, because nylon are strong but at the same time they are very flexible. So due to that flexibility, it can actually move comfortably inside your mouth. Question number 11. Match columns in 1 with column 2. So these are some of the things in columns 1 and 2. Polyester. So polyester is the fabric which does not wrinkle easily. Teflon. So Teflon is used to make non-stick cookware. Why? Because it is heat resistant. Rayon is the artificial silk and it is the semi-synthetic fiber because it is prepared from wood pulp. Nylon, it is so strong and elastic that it is used for making parachutes and stockings. Question number 12. Manufacturing synthetic fibers is actually helping conservation of forests. How? Now, when we manufacture synthetic fibers, we are actually not bothering the forests much because we really do not need the plants for this. So, we are not cutting down plants. So, what do we need for manufacturing synthetic fibers? We need the petrochemicals which are formed naturally deep under the earth. So, that means in order to make more and more synthetic fibers, no harm is being caused to the forests. Forests are not being cut down, and that is how forests are being conserved. So synthetic fibers are manufactured artificially and manufactured from coal, petroleum, etc. So we are not really dependent on forests, and therefore no harm is being caused to the forests.
I hope you found the video useful. If you have a feedback to share, do let us know in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, share it with your friends too. I will meet you guys very soon with a new video with a new topic. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.